Welcome back to Bookwrights House, where stories of courage, resilience, and humanity take center stage. This afternoon, we are honored to sit down with a man whose life has spanned battlefields and flight decks. Colonel David O. Scheiding, retired USAF fighter pilot and decorated Vietnam veteran, has lived a remarkable life of service and leadership. Good afternoon, David. I'm Elijah Barcelona, and it's such a privilege to welcome you here at Bookwrights House. So thank you for being with us. Okay,
Well,
so let's start at the beginning. What
okay.
first sparked your love for aviation, and how did it shape those early years of your life?
Well, when I was a kid, born in small town in Iowa, anytime an airplane would fly over, I'd just stop no matter what I was doing to just watch it. And that kind of got me interested in it. That wound up being that when I graduated from high school, I went to Iowa State University and wanted to design airplanes. So I enrolled in an environmental or aeronautical engineering. And at Iowa State, they were at that time they were in the top 10% of the engineering schools. So, and that's just I've been interested in flying since that time.
So there's something I'm really curious about. So do you remember your first flight? What was going through your mind at that moment?
Yeah, in fact, there's a couple first flights that were very important to me during my sophomore year in aeronautical engineering. We were taking an aerodynamics class, and the university there had a Navion airplane, and they would put little tufts of yarn out on the wings, and we'd go fly, and you could watch the flow of the air across the wings and so forth. So that really was interesting to me to watch the aerodynamics of the across the wing of the airplane. That was the first one, and when I was in, like I say, I was a sophomore in college. The second one was during my while I was in ROTC at Iowa State, because in that time you had to be in ROTC. I signed up for Air Force ROTC, and I thought, well, I'll go through the whole thing. If I could pass the pilot physical, I took it, made that. So I became interested in the Air Force and flying at the same time. And during my summer camp for ROTC, they sent me to Schilling Air Force Base, and I got my first flight in a T-33, which is a jet aircraft, was similar to the old F-80. So my first flight was in a Navion, which was very good. And then my first flight in a jet aircraft was a T-33 at Schilling Air Force Base.
Wow. That was that was such an experience. Okay, so now tell us about your early training. How did that journey eventually led you to Vietnam?
Okay. As part of the advanced ROC program, if you were going to be a pilot, the Air Force would pay for 36 hours of flight training there at the college. So there were three of us that were going to be pilots, and we were started this FIP program, they called it. And after 36 hours, if your instructor thought you could pass the private license flight check, they would put you up. Normally it takes 40 hours to get a private license. But after 36 hours, my instructor thought I could pass, put me up. I wound up passing, got my private license there. And then once I graduated from Iowa State with a BS in aerospace engineering and as a second lieutenant in the Air Force, then I was assigned to Lubbock Air Force Base, or Lubbock, Texas, where Reese Air Force Base was. And then I went through the T-37 program, and then I was a third class flying T-38s. So that kind of got me to the point where when I graduated from UPT, you had to put in for what assignment you wanted after that, and for the Air Force to assign you for your active duty. So I was high enough in the class that I wanted to fly fighter aircraft because of my experience with the T-33 and the T-37, T-38. But at that time, they were putting F4s, putting us in F4s, and putting a pilot in the back seat of an F4, which now they use Wizzos. So I didn't want to go to a backseat of an F4, so I became an instructor pilot at Laughlin Air Force Base as in T-37s. Then in 1968, the Air Force came out with a plan that you could volunteer to go to Vietnam, and you could volunteer for like fighters, bombers, airlift, anything like that. Well, I volunteered for fighters to go to Vietnam, and but because of my capabilities or my assignment at Laughlin Air Force Base, they didn't release me from the to go, because I was the only one at that base could teach spins to all the instructor pilots. So they froze me until it was in January of or December of 1970. They finally released me. So I got it. My assignment came down as a forward air controller, and that's an O2. That's just like a Skymaster. It's a light airplane flying in combat, but with fighter qualifications. So they sent me to got me qualified as a fighter pilot, then sent me off to forward air controller school flying O2s, and then they sent me to Vietnam, and I knew I'd be over there supporting the Army as a forward air controller.
Thank you for that. Now let's talk about your faith. So faith comes through strongly in your story. So how has your personal belief guided you both up in the cockpit and now as at the writer's desk?
Well, I tell you, yes, I was raised by a strong religious family, and I've always believed in God and Jesus and so forth. And when I was in Vietnam, there was one day during the offensive in 1972, I was getting ready to go on a mission over there. And as I started taxiing out, the strange feeling came over me. Never had it before or since, but this feeling that was like there was something wrong. And this voice in my head said, "Don't fly today." And I kind of went on, taxi a little bit farther, didn't think too much about it. The voice got a little bit louder, and he said, "Don't fly today." I got to the end of the runway, and he almost yelled at me. He said, "Don't fly today." And I knew right then God was talking to me. I turned around and I didn't fly. So it was been very strong. In fact, because of that incident is why I named my third book, "Don't Fly Today." And it kind of gives you all the evidence of what all he did for me throughout my life.
So a lot of veterans talk about carrying silent memories. Are there experiences you've only recently felt ready to share?
Well, I tell you, when we came back from Vietnam, we weren't treated very well, and I would say those memories that I didn't want to share at the time. That what I did was I shut down at that time, and I got home in 70, late 72, middle 72. So I'd shut down, and the way it happened was my wife stayed at Del Rio, where I was the instructor pilot while I was in Vietnam. She came over to get me at 10 o'clock at night as I was walking out to get my bag, and she's gonna pick me up, and we're gonna go home. This hippie-looking individual was walking out towards the gate while I'm coming in, and I was in my uniform, and he's glaring at me, and he's just, you could just tell he had great disdain for me. And when he got right beside me, he spit right in front of me, and that's where it started. Went downhill from there. I went to college the Air Force sent me to college, the University of Denver, and I watched Walter Cronkite complain about Vietnam. I saw Jane Fonda sitting on a artillery anti-air gun in North Vietnam, one that opened up on me just like that over in Cambodia. I watched John Kerry throw his medals over the White House fence, and I thought, hey, I don't know how where I even fit here. And so I literally shut down, and I didn't talk about Vietnam for many, many years. So my silent moments were there, and I didn't start talking about Vietnam until 2009, when my wife bought a book for me called Back from War by Lieutenant Kelly. He was an Army lieutenant, and he had in his book was 20 stories of people like me, soldiers, and I knew that I was not alone. And at that point, I thought, well, maybe I can talk a little bit about it. And so that's when I first started. My silent moments were over, and then I could actually talk about it. And,
Okay, that's
and yeah, so it was, and kind of bad, but I found out that there was a lot of people like me, and my my wife thought I had changed significantly. I didn't think I had, but I probably had because the way I responded.
okay. That's really good to hear. Okay, so you were even featured in a National Geographic documentary. So how did it come about, and what was it like to have such an intense part of your life captured on a film?
Yeah, well, how that occurred was when I was going to the University of Denver. I got my master's degree in civil engineering, and then what they did from there, they sent me to Kelly Air Force Base down here, and as a structural engineer. And what happened was in 1975, when Vietnam was falling, uh, we had sent a C-5 over there with taking the howitzers for the South Vietnam Army. And on the way out, they decided all of our military people had left in '73. So what happened then? The women over there that unfortunately our soldiers had gotten pregnant and they had children with, they abandoned all those kids when the soldiers left. Well, our government decided to bring those orphans out, so they called it Operation Baby Lift. So they put her on that C-5, and as the C-5 was leaving, it wound up crashing. And then the way I got picked to go over there, the four-star general at MAC wanted two engineers from Kelly to go to Vietnam and investigate the accident. So myself and a mechanical engineer, we wound up going over to Vietnam and investigate the accident. Uh, we got out 3 days before the country fell. And then when they started writing the report, what happened was a two-star general was in charge of the accident board, and he wanted to call the cause of the accident something that I could not agree with because I was a licensed Texas professional engineer, and he wanted to call it design deficiency. And myself and the other engineer says, nope, it's maintenance. But the two-star was in charge of MAC maintenance at the time. And so he literally kicked us off the board. We had to go back to Kelly, tell our two-star general that we just got kicked off the board. And but we told that two-star general when we left, we were majors then. And he says, we're going to write a dissenting report to your report. He says, do what you have to do. We went back, told our two-star, and he says, our two-star asked us if we could prove our version of the accident. And we said, yes, we can. So we did. We wrote the report. Our two-star signed it, sent it in to compete with that two-stars thing. And it went to Air Force Safety. 6 months later, Air Force Safety says, we agree with the San Antonio position. And how it impacted my life was that because of that, I could finish my career. That two-star general got fired, lost a star, and he got a week to get off the base. So it impacted him pretty good. Then when National Geographic had a series called Air Disasters that they were doing, they wanted to do a film or actually story on the Operation Baby Lift. They called me from Canada, came down and interviewed me for 9 hours, and so that's how I wound up in that program.
So after such a remarkable military career, what led you to make the jump into writing?
Well, my first book was called Hank, an Angel Dog, and I decided that was a dog that we got when my mother-in-law passed away. We rescued a dog from the kennels over in Omaha, and we got him for my father-in-law. And the dog had been beaten and badly, and he was about 5, 6 months old. And my father-in-law was really good with dogs. He was able to train him or get that out of him, because every time you pick up a broom, he'd just cower down and everything. And he was about a 60-pound dog. He was part boxer and some kind of hunting dog. And for 3 months, my father-in-law walked around the backyard training that dog that he's not going to get beaten. And so Herman had him for 5.5 years. And then when Herman couldn't take care of him, when we had to move him into an assisted living facility, my wife and I, Jan, took care of him. And we had him for 9.5 years. And during that time period, he overcame stage 3 lymphoma, thyroid cancer, and a stroke. And that's why I called him an angel dog, because he was just a magnificent dog. So I decided that I was going to write a book about him. And when we did lose him, we actually buried him in a pet cemetery. So I still go and visit him. So that was Hank, an angel dog. So, and you can see the body language of how that dog just loved Herman. You can see you can just tell that dog just loved him. So, and he did the same thing for us. So that's how it got me in writing. And then as far as the long return, I got started writing on that when my wife bought a book in 2009 that was back from the war, and I read that, and then I was starting to make comments about my time in Vietnam, and she said, "Well, you ought to document something for your sons." And so, well, I did. I was running my own business at that time, and I went over and made a cassette tape for about an hour and 15 minutes, everything. Then I thought, I doubt if they're going to be able to find a cassette player. So I sat down and I wrote the book, The Long Return, and that's how I got into that one. And then later on, I wrote the Don't Fly Today, based upon that incident out there about how God was talking to me about not flying. So, but I wrote that, and what I did, I went through my whole life and all the empirical evidence of how God led me to do everything that I wound up doing in Vietnam. I wound up being the operations officer of the largest combat squadron in Vietnam during the offensive in 1972. And some of my sorties is working with the CIA is we actually ended that conflict in 72 by me taking out the Bon Son River Bridge, and the North was not able to get a seaport. They couldn't supply their troops, and they had to quit. And so that's when I wrote the Long Return, because he guided me through my whole life. And that's when I wrote Don't Fly Today. And that's why at the bottom, it says, when God speaks, listen, warning to atheists, God does exist.
You talked about your first book and The Long Return, and I've heard about what was your last book called again? Don't Fly?
Don't Fly Today. Mm-hmm.
Fly Today. Okay. So you've written 3 books so far. Which
Right.
one turned out to be the hardest to write, and what made it so challenging?
I Don't Fly Today was the hardest one to write, and I wrote the Hank book in about a year. I wrote the Long Return in about a year, but I started writing Don't Fly Today, and after about 6 months, I didn't like the way it was flowing. It wasn't. I couldn't get it to work properly, so I quit. I waited about 6 months. I thought, well, I'll try one more time. Well, same thing happened after about 6 months. It didn't work again, so I literally just quit. And then it was about a year later, God told me that I needed to finish the book, and so I started writing, and He helped me. And I put that book together, and it flowed and everything, and it went well. And so I was happy with that. So I figured He wanted me to write the book. And that's why I wrote one in 2015, 2016, and then took me to 2020 to write the last one.
Okay, so you lived through moments that most people only ever read about. So, what's the single biggest life lesson those moments have taught you?
The well, the the fact that I was a former air controller turned out to be the best job I ever had in the Air Force, and the reason why is because I saved lives of the people on the ground, and the because of that, uh, the I felt very good about it, and it taught me what the uh, what God can do if you allow Him. And we think we're in charge. We're not. You gotta realize that you're going to do what He wants you to do because He's got a plan for all of us. And so, to me, that's what I learned was in life that hey, don't worry about tomorrow. God will take care of it, and He did. Because I ran my own business for a while after I retired, and I started it, ran it, and there were times where we didn't have enough money to make payroll. And on the payday, when my business manager would go out to the mailbox and she came back in, she would have checks. And so God, we never missed a payroll, and He helped me. And so God's there. Just trust Him. Do what He wants you to do, and everything will be just fine.
Indeed, God is always there. So, beyond just the stories themselves, what do you hope readers carry with them after finishing your books?
Well, like on Hank, I wrote that because I felt the dog was such a magnificent dog. I wanted other people to realize just how special dogs can be because dogs are God's gift to us, and that's part of God's creation. And so I wrote that book as to honor Him and let people know, what dogs can do, the love and loyalty that they can give you. So for that one, and on the long return, uh, I wrote that basically because it was therapeutic for me because the way we were treated, I just shut down, and I went by writing that helped me adjust back to the world. And the one I gave that copy to a lot of my friends, and they felt the same way, and they thanked me because that it helped them because they got treated the same way I did. And then on the Don't Fly Today, what I hope to get out of it, that God wanted me to write it, so He wants somebody someplace to read it and be converted to Christianity. So I'm hoping that's what the purpose of that book is. That if it saves one soul, that's all I'm interested in.
So you wrote everything as part of the healing process and you healed other people as well. Okay,
Right.
that's a good purpose. That's a really good purpose. Okay,
Yeah.
so for the question, you've been recognized with the Marquis Who's Who Lifetime Achievement Award. So when you look back, what does that honor mean to you both personally and professionally?
Uh, I thought that award was they covered, of course, the Operation Baby Lift and a lot of the things that I did in Vietnam. But when they offered me or had me selected me for that award, I kind of looked at it as, oh, that's kind of like the Hollywood stars getting a star on the Walk of Fame, and so I felt getting that, that was a tremendous honor for me that they would select me for that award, for the Lifetime Achievement Award. So that's what how that it worked with me is what I thought about it.
Okay, so David, thank you for sharing not only your incredible career, your journey from fighter pilot to storyteller, from cockpit to companion, has given us a glimpse of courage, sacrifice, and love in all its forms. So, to everyone joining us, thank you for being part of today's conversation. May this story inspire you to cherish the bonds that heal us, honor those who serve, and find meaning in the journeys we take. So, until next time, keep reading, keep reflecting, and keep celebrating the stories that remind us what truly matters. So, we'll see you again here at Book House.